In this video, I'm going to share with you about my creative journey and how I got started as a designer. So let's sit around the virtual campfire and let me tell you a story. Let's go. So I was born in a town called Dartford, which is a few miles outside of London in the UK. I was born in 1997. So as any child does in their early formative years, they find a crayon or a pen or a pencil and they just draw on anything they can. I ended up drawing on my parents' wedding album, the original copy, and it's fair to say they weren't too happy about that. I always loved art in school. That was my favourite subject, and I loved anything that involved creativity. I hated sitting at a desk and writing. I much preferred going and doing something, whether it was a school trip or whether it was an art class, whatever it was, I enjoyed doing something with my hands. So for my birthday, my dad bought me this Sanyo video camera, and it had a whopping 6 megapixels, but it could go underwater, it had a flip out screen, so I could do everything that I needed to do with it. So I started producing all of these small videos. Me and my friends would go to the park or we'd hang out in my room and we'd just come up with an idea and then film it. And the process took maybe like 10 minutes. We'd come up with an idea in the first 5 and then film the movie in the second 5. And then I would edit it on iMovie and upload it to Facebook or YouTube, which had just been coming up at the time. So I would make short videos for quite a few years, and in that creative process, I would make thumbnails for YouTube. And so that's when my design really started to take off, was when I had to start making these YouTube thumbnails. So fast forward to 2014 and I had started attending my parents' church. Now most of my family are Christian, and so it was just a normal thing for me to go to church when I was younger, but I had a few years away from church, and this was me kind of getting back into things. So I started to get serious with God that year, and I gave my life to Christ at the age of 16. And it was from there that I started to use my video skills to make videos for my church. So they came back from mission trips, or they had like a promo video they needed doing, and I would record it and edit it. And that was kind of me just getting started in church. So I finished my last year of school in 2015, and I remember talking to my friends, and they were like, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do when you finish? And for me, I didn't really have a clue. I didn't wanna go out and find a job. I didn't know if I wanted to go to university. I didn't really have an idea. And it was while I was volunteering at my church and helping out while making videos, I was offered a job to, as soon as I finished school, to start working there full time. So in my first year of working for the church, I was also enrolled in an apprenticeship program, and that meant that I was studying creative and digital media while working for the church. So in my first few weeks there, I'd kind of psyched myself up to just be doing video work. Like that's what I expected. I went in thinking like, oh, I'm just gonna make videos and this is already what I know how to do. But what I realized was that church is completely different on the inside to what I experienced on the outside. And there was so much stuff that I needed to learn and do, and most of that was design work. So I had to upskill quickly. I spent hours on YouTube looking at Photoshop tutorials, Premiere tutorials, and just trying to learn as much as I can about this new software. I had never really touched Photoshop before, apart from at school to like edit teachers' faces. So this was a completely new learning curve for me. So there was a lot of trial and error in those early days, and I look back on some of my designs from that time period and I cringe because they're just so badly laid out. The font choice is horrible, the photos are horrible, but I was learning, that's part of the journey. If you want to see some of my older designs, let me know in the comments and I'll create a reaction video to some of the things that I made back then. But it wasn't all bad. The more I designed, the more I fell in love with this artistic problem solving. The idea of taking information and displaying it in a way that best communicates the message. I always enjoy it. It was around that time that my passion for design really came to life. So I'm still working at the church, and in 2016 we hired another full-time creative. And suddenly my time went from learning how to use Photoshop and creating things to now managing someone else and trying to teach them all the things that I had learned. See, this was a huge learning curve for me because I not only had to get better at my own craft, but I also had to help others on their creative journey too. So fast forward a year and I was leading the creative team at my church, and also becoming part of the wider creative community. And that's where I first found out about the pro-church media community. It was so helpful when I was looking for inspiration, but also on how to run a team better. So skip forward a couple of years to 2019, and most of my time in the church was spent leading a team. And so my own personal creativity took a back seat. That was the same year that I proposed to my wonderful wife, Megan. And because she's from California, we had a pretty big decision to make that year. Which country were we going to be living in? Was it the UK or the US? So in June of that year, we both decided that I was going to move to the US, which was a huge, scary and exciting opportunity for me, which would of course mean that I needed to wrap things up at my home church and get ready for the move. So I finished working at the church in November 2019, and I now found myself without a job, waiting for a visa and navigating moving across the world. And while I was waiting for all those things to take place, I had this question burning, which was, what do I do now? So I decided that the job that would give me the most flexibility while I was navigating this move would be to go freelance. But I jumped into this world without a job and didn't really have a clue of what I was doing, who my clients were, and how to even get them. So I got to the end of that year and I realized that my creativity had been pushed to the side and that I'd actually fallen out of love with design. So on New Year's Eve, I set myself the challenge that in 2020, I would create something every day and post it to my Instagram. And Design by REUBEN was born. So as I pushed myself to be more creative, I fell back in love with artistic problem solving. And I loved the idea of visually communicating a message. And the cool thing was, as I began to pursue these passions, God brought people into my life that offered me opportunities. Then the pandemic hit and my world ground to a halt. See, my fiance was on the other side of the world. We were locked down in our homes here in the UK. And my visa process had been postponed. But it was during this time where I felt God was using my creativity the most. He really helped me focus in on building my content and building my business. So as I wait for the world to settle and things to open back up, I'm still in the UK. Fortunately, my wife was able to travel into the UK last year, and in November 2020, we finally got married. And so I consider the last 10 years of my life kind of the start of the journey, where I really formed an idea and a passion for what I wanted to do in the future. I think of my journey less of a rock climb and more of a winding path. Sometimes there'll be downhill moments, sometimes there'll be places where you get lost and you don't know exactly the direction you're heading, but that's part of the creative journey. You learn from all of those moments, and everything that I did in the last 10 years has helped add up to be the person I am today. If I had to give some advice to you watching about getting started on your creative journey, I would say 2 things. The first thing is this: find your passion. You will do a better job if you love what you do. And number 2, just get started. There'll never be a perfect time for you to start this journey, so you may as well just take a risk, jump in, and just get started. If you've enjoyed this video, leave a like. It really does go a long way to helping this channel. And let me know in the comments about your creative journey and some of the things that you're going through right now. Consider subscribing for more videos like this to come, and I'll see you again soon.